Okay, excuse me. So, so as far as what went on in the neighborhood, this area of Brighton Beach, during the time they were inducing that they kept in the time that they kept inducing the shock to be more acute or whatever you want to place it, or whatever, during the time that they were acutely, they kept placing me in shock, all still torture. Um, through the scenarios they were putting through the neighborhood, they had, I remember, uh, there was one distinct time where I called it the Green Mile, the whole boardwalk. I would walk, for me, I would walk down the end of the boardwalk because it was I would walk there to go towards the train station, but I liked walking down and seeing the water, like on my way to the train station or something. Sometimes I would just take that route that way. So, being induced in shock, it became something that was a routine when I would walk and things of that nature. So, from walking to get Lucy's, I walked down the boardwalk. And when I walked down the boardwalk, during that day when I came outside, um, there were different nationalities on the boardwalk. And this was a very large scenario where there were some people in orange jumpsuits, two tall Russian women running in uh, scuba like attire, um, and then also a guy with tattoos. He was kind of macho, riding in a toy truck, one of those motor trucks or whatever the case may be uh, that us as kids we used to ride in, or we bought our kids, or kids would get, you would buy the kids and stuff like that. And while I was walking down the boardwalk, what they conditioned my body to, as if when I looked at the scenarios, that it seemed as if my daughter was getting threatened, I went to the bench with no back on it and I sat there as a sign to rest and say, no, this is my child. And they had their children pass by me. And I sat on the bench out of condition as to say, don't threaten my child, because I couldn't speak what I wanted to say. I was in shock. So I sat on the bench, and every time I would see a child, I would sit on the bench till it became something in my mind, that a response, that my body would sit on the bench. And I remember coming outside one time too, laying on the bench. And when I laid on the bench, my area was to lay there in the sun, despite everything that was going on, to try to find some type of safety in a little bubble. And I laid there on the bench and I just laid out and stretched out. But then, just weirdly enough, I started pushing my arms up like this. But I was exercising my arms. But then all I could think about is laying on a laying on a bench and lifting weights, as if I was an inmate or something like that. And throughout all of that, um, there were different couples that was on the boardwalk. It was two Cuban women, an Indian couple, a man and a woman, uh, people who were unfortunately inmates that were wearing bright orange jumpsuits. One African American woman walked on the beach while two Russian inmate guys walked my way, passing by my way. I'm on one side of the line of the boardwalk, and they're walking this way while I'm walking that way. And on this side, at the bar of the boardwalk. The couples are there, and I'm watching them while this stuff is coming towards my way. And when I would pass by them, they turn. And so now it becomes more, because of the way that my everything was induced in shock. My body was induced in shock, and what they were placing there in the reality, it becomes like a fuzz mentally, but it's not, because I understand that it was happening. And so within it, or whatever the case may be, while I'm passing by, when I passed by the Cuban women, my head went down, and then my hand went down in decision. And I lifted my head back up. And then I was just like, I felt this surge. And within it, or whatever the case may be, I remember some calm when I saw when out throughout all of that happening, I saw people of my own color come around in the neighborhood, but they were identified as, my type of skin color, the redness of my skin, but darker complexion. And it was said to me, "You're Cherokee." But I was called the Ethiopian in the Arab store. Um, and and that's the place I used to frequent to go get breakfast if I didn't want to cook, or just enjoying a quick cup of coffee, just buying something from the store. And in that, or whatever the case may be, during that day, I remember that when I walked down, everything was everything just hit all the scenarios, just what they induced from Coney Island Hospital, from coming from the hospital and laying in my bed and my body just out of it. And I'm getting flashbacks, acute flashbacks, like back and forth after they released me out of the hospital. And that was when my heart felt like a rubber ball. I had went to the store, and when I walked back up the boardwalk, they were having these scenarios down the boardwalk. And the dude that he did a U-turn in a toy truck, not toy truck, but the kid toy motor car. And he did a U-turn around me while holding the kid. It was a baby he was riding it. And he was riding the baby inside of the toddler inside of the car, the toy, the kid's car. And he had him cuffed towards his chest like this, but then it was slowly turned in front of me as if this was a threat towards my child. And while walking down the boardwalk, um, I remember when coming out of the hospital, the second hospital, and I walked down the boardwalk. When I looked at the ocean and the sun, it was like a barrier was there in my eyesight. Like I couldn't recognize how the sun felt on my skin. So from that second hospital, Stony Brook, uh, they had me in a ward where they had a distortion of colors. And they had bright colors, but with a dark scale. And they sent the paper that I wrote. I didn't write a 72-hour letter, and they were going back and forth with it. Do you want to write a 72-hour letter and all this other crap like this? And I'm not asking me, but telling me well, you need to write a 72-hour letter. I wrote a letter according to what I understood that was going on. And I understood that I wasn't supposed to be in there. And I understood that I responded according to what I knew that was wrong, that they did not place me in there under the right circumstances. This was after I was and my daughter was advocated for at Knoxville. And I wrote on the letter. So instead of having me in prison, uh, they made it so that the scenarios will come from being in a mental institution, as to mock my intelligence, Black people's intelligence, that this is what they think of us. And so, or whatever the case may be. So being highly empathetic, I think there is a spiritual connection to uh, the roots in who I am. There is in myth or mythology or in movies that are made, I do understand that there is a presence in spiritual understanding, especially through the Holy Spirit or especially through spiritual understanding of ancestors and psychic understanding and all this other stuff like that. Even in understanding that conspiracy theory is in fact confusion imparted to turn society away from those who are intelligent to understand the true aspects of what happens in life, where there's no need for conspiracy theories, or the placement of conspiracy theory in what it is, as opposed to what an actual conspiracy consists of. You can't label something as a conspiracy theory when it's not. You can't label something as truth and validity as something as an uproar of something planted. That's not true when it's conducive to a foundation that's built that or is that uh, regulates order. Conspiracy would mean to uproot order. And order is only given to something that has stability, not created or fabricated for stability. And I say that not by choice, I say that by fact that anything that's consistent how can I place this? A person would not have to struggle to make true something that bears witness in the hearts of many witnesses without deceit or lack of foundation or towards that area. But I think the purpose is to stay on the fact of the understanding that that Um, when dealing with uh, what I've dealt with um, from the ICC in their plan, or whatever the case may be, to lead me and my child to this. Um, their plan was to for me to speak on what was personal to me, but in accordance to getting faced to this point. When I was placed in Coney Island Hospital, the plan was for me to be put away. They did not expect my mind and my body to understand difference in what I was being tortured as. So as a result, they had more situations occur in this neighborhood where it got to the point where my heart felt like a rubber ball, and it produced a blood clot, and I felt when it moved through my valve, my heart valve, and I also felt when it passed in my body. Um, so as they kept inducing collectively uh, just shock in this neighborhood with the scenarios, situations that had happened, FDNY being outside of my door, um, even occurrences where they had my sprinkler on when I came from the store, um, as to reenact being hosed as a civil rights person. They had, the people were in the neighborhood, walking through the neighborhood with their radios on. Um, one happened to pass by me with just basically speaking about Black Lives Matter, about somebody getting shot for protesting. Um, a family came in front of me, just basically, uh, a family was in front of me and just basically showing how, they're a family and they love each other. And I understand that. There was nothing ignored about that. It was more so happiness brought to my understanding where seeing the mother uh, tend to her child, that was a kindness to me to see a child. And as a mother, and in that, or whatever the case may be. Um, so walking down the boardwalk, uh, just all those different scenarios and things that had occurred. There was a time where I had walked down the avenue here towards the train station and not the boardwalk. And different. It was like people were just walking down the street, but with the lack of control on my body, I tried to move away from just basically what was obviously being placed, just basically in alertness, if you will. Um, so within it, it was said over. Um, there was a there was an Arab couple. There was a Jewish family. I remember the Jewish family that passed by me, um, and things were happening just like clockwork. Uh, it was as if as soon as someone got hip to understanding what was happening with me, the next day a new things occurred. And so I remember one time when I had walked out to the boardwalk uh, in the morning, a Jewish rabbi. I walked on the ground without any shoes on, and I walked on the ground just basically to feel the sand like under my feet. So that's why I didn't have any shoes on. And when I walked towards the sand and stuff like that, and I took off my slippers right before I went on the sand, it was an indication of something else. But it was also for me just basically walking on the sand and feeling the sand under my feet, just like if I would take a leaf and feel the leaf that you're here, you know, to bring my level of distress down. And so uh, I would I walked on the sand just basically to have the sand under my feet. And while doing so, um, it was as if the rabbi was examining me. And when I turned from, I think it was another occasion, either that same day, but I walked towards the corner, towards going towards the store to get something to eat. And another rabbi and his wife, she turned to me and she cursed me in Hebrew, or whatever the case may be, her language, in Jewish Hebrew. And it was it was as if the husband, or whatever the case may be, was studious about it. They both played different areas, if you will, but that is how they felt about me. And there was, and this is kind of difficult to draw in when it comes to these things that happen, but the basis of it is to understand that scenarios were put in the neighborhood as such. And I remember after my body experiencing all the things that were occurring when I went through the bars that were right there towards the entrance, the front part of my building, uh, that goes into the boardwalk. In the middle, there's a wide section, and another Russian young man was standing there. And at that very point, I began to cry because with everything just so being like a system overload to me, I grieved what was conditioned for me to understand. Just basically, I thought about my child. And I sat there and I grieved. And I passed by another uh, situation where there were two guys in front of the building in a car. And I went towards the service entrance to go sit. And then understanding culturally what that meant, then I made a decision to not go near the service entrance, even though my intentions were to sit there and to think. So I went towards the front of the building and went inside. Then, uh, but at that point, with all the things that were happening and overload, my chest just basically, I felt like my chest felt like a rubber ball within my chest. And that is how I understand that they were conditioning just basically my body for um conditioning my body for an area of trying to condition a subconscious within my consciousness, if that makes sense. With how can I place this? With 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 the with how the torture happened, just basically um, from what is explained from before. Um, the area of myself that was, how can I put this? From when I was in the hospital, uh, the day that they released me from the hospital, after the Russian woman did what she did to my finger, when during the time that I was laying down and they were putting the medicine within my intravenously in my body, and they were going back and forth, is she vaccinated, is she this, is she that, and doing all of that, I was asking them to help me in the midst of it. And uh the way that it was done, more so within, uh let me stop this and just listen to this. I don't think, let me see. You see my dogs running around in the background. Yes, I am at home. Every girl needs a little bit of oil in her life for her hair. And this almond oil, it's a blend with mint oil. Hold on. You just need a little bit though. Here we go. Boop, boop.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Just kind of right here helps keep the flyaways down, keeps your hair shiny, and you can get yours at myallerganics.com. Bam, bam. You can thank me later. ¿Cómo son los hombres ideales? Dana. Los hombres ideales. I was moved into this apartment around 2019. I found this apartment through the Commission on Human Rights. In connection with the International Christian Church. Now, before anyone presents the notion that how can somebody like this be listened to? It was sought that I be suffered more within my first witness of people that out of the healthy things that sustain my life, that certain areas will be exasperated or created as triggers, and it was done within businesses, particularly within Amtrak and Greyhound. When I was in the ICC, I traveled to Boston. There, I took Greyhound to go to Boston. Now, there, it was my choice how can I say? I'll put it this way. Within the natural things that I turn to in order to enjoy my way of living, they use that to present as a collateral, if you will, to turn to abrupt the hearts and minds of people. However, once the ICC